What's up, guys? Welcome in another Monday. A busy Monday at that. Big recruiting weekend this weekend has left me busy today. We're going to try to keep this one under the 30-minute mark. So we're going to dive right in. We're going to open up with a little baseball first, and we can jump into some recruiting, whatever recruiting you want to talk about. Drop it in the comments, and we can talk about that particular person. But we're going to start off with Eric Bakich in the baseball team. They went toe to toe with Wake Forest this weekend. Outside, even that first game they lost by, I think it ended up being 8-3. But even that first game was close till late when Wake Forest got a pinch hit home run late. It was a 3-run bomb, and all three of those games, man, just especially those last two, Clemson lost kind of in heartbreaking fashion. If you listen to Eric Bakich talk after that Saturday loss, the Friday loss, and then talk again after the Saturday loss. You could tell, especially after the sweep, after the third loss and the sweep was complete, that absolutely a lot of disappointment in that dugout. But you can also tell that he still believes that team's going to turn it around. And he made it a point to tell us both days, Friday and Saturday, that it was not coach speak. He was speaking straight from the heart. I remember he said, "I believe it with every fiber of my being that we're going to turn it around." He thinks they're going to turn it around soon. And he said, when they do, they're going to be hard to stop. Sounds like maybe one more week away from getting Ryan Ammons back. And events. So maybe you get both of those guys back. That could really have an impact on this pitching staff. The pitching was not terrible this weekend. That was a very good baseball team that Wake Forest brought to town. Probably one of the best in the country. They are ranked number 2 for a reason. That is a very well-rounded team. They've made very few mistakes. Man, they are superb defensively. They have the best rotation by far that I've seen all season. Those guys can deal. All three of those starting pitchers came in with ERAs under 2. So, a lot of, even though he didn't want to talk about the positives to take away, right after that third loss, a lot of positives to take away from that series, man. That to me, the toughest part is going to be trying to keep frustration from setting in because they are so close, man. So many of their losses have been close ones. I want to say 9 out of the 13 have been by 3 runs or less, and a bunch of those came in the late innings. Several of them when Clemson had to lead in the late innings. So a lot of heartbreaking losses, man. It's sometimes some frustration can set in, so that'll be a challenge that coaching staff faces over the next few weeks. And it doesn't get any easier, man. They've already played one of the toughest schedules in the country, and it just continues. Coastal Carolina, top 20 team, comes to town tomorrow. Ethan Darden goes. So we'll see if they can get back in the win column tomorrow. That one's at home. Then they go and play Coastal on the road in a couple of weeks. But I'm sure what most of you want to talk about is the recruiting. Big recruiting weekend in Clemson this weekend, mostly 2025 guys. So no guy, none of those guys have offers yet. It is not going to be, it's going to be June before any of those offers start going out. But a lot of names in town that you should probably start familiarizing yourself with. Davis Sanders, the top offensive lineman in the next class. He was back for the first time, I think, since the North Carolina State game, maybe. Gideon Davison, the top running back in the class, was back for the first time since the North Carolina State game, and he's going to be back for the spring game too. Matter of fact, I talked with Gideon a little while ago. If there is one kid that visited this weekend who I think is a perfect culture fit for Clemson, it is him. He raves about C.J. Spiller every time I talk to him. His dad raves about the coaching staff, always mentions Jordan Sorrells. That is I know people like to think CJ Spiller has struggled with running back recruiting. They got their running back locked up early in this class, and it would not surprise me at all if they don't get their running back locked up early in the next class. They've been in on this kid for a while, and he just seems like the perfect fit. And he doesn't come out and say it. Don't get me wrong, but I think I get the impression he feels like he's a pretty good fit at Clemson too. That's the one I was waiting on, Air Nolan. Everybody wants to ask about Air Nolan. April 8th, Saturday, commitment day. He's been to Clemson the one time, went to Ohio State this weekend, came away with an offer from the Buckeyes. Hard to know right now how much of a player they became in this thing, because I don't think that he set his commitment date already knowing where he was going. He's been taking visits still. I would have had him leaning towards Miami as we entered the spring. And I'm not sure I've heard anything that's changed my mind about that. But it's also hard to get a good read on him. He's one of those kids that he's always coming off every visit. He's high on that school. He was high on Clemson coming off of their visit, high on Miami coming off of that visit, and it's been like that with all the other visits he's taken. So we're just going to have to see how this thing plays out. I do not get the feeling that this one's going to go Clemson's way, though. Let's face it, you got two underclassmen quarterbacks on this roster, both former 5-stars. Or again, Vizina was a 5-star until right up before the early signing period when he got knocked down to 4-star status. But spent a large part of the recruiting cycle ranked as a 5-star. So you got two elite-level talents, two underclassmen elite-level talents. That's why I've said for a year that I thought Clemson was going to have a hard time signing a highly rated quarterback in the 2024 class. Having said that, I think Aaron Nolan is certainly capable of coming in here and possibly beating Vizina out. I think Aaron Nolan's that good. That's not to take anything away from Vizina. That's just how highly I think of Nolan. Another thing to look at is Kay Klubnik might be here 4 years. He might have this job locked down for 3 more years. And if you're in Aaron Nolan's shoes, if you go to Clemson, you are potentially sitting behind two guys, one the starter that's in place now who's already got up to 3 more years left, then Vizina. I mean, there are easier paths to the playing field for Nolan at other schools. I just don't think this one's going to play out in Clemson's favor. That's just my gut. That's not any intel. I've never had a good feeling about this recruitment as far as Clemson's concerned, and nothing's changed throughout the entire process. A few days we'll know for sure, though. Saturday he's going to announce, and we'll all know. As for where they turn to next, no, I do not think they're going to save the scholarship for 2025. They still need a quarterback in this class. There will still be a lot of options out there. I'm not sure they even know yet where they will turn to next, but there are going to be options, and they're not just going to kick the can down the road and pocket the scholarship and go on to 2025. They want to take one in this class and one in 2025. You start taking two in the same class, it gets even that much more difficult. And the transfer you just brought in, Paul Tyson, he's actually got 2 years of eligibility left. So, I mean, it's not like you don't have to knock it out of the park in 2024, so to speak. I mean, when you had that kind of talent when Vizina and Klubnik both on the roster at the same time, it's just going to make it that hard, much harder. But no, I do not think they're going to pocket the scholarship and go on and wait till 2025. Again, I think they want one in 2024. I think they want one in 2025. If you do that, that means you got to sign two in 2025. And it's not always easy signing two quarterbacks in the same recruiting class, especially in the NIL era. And looking ahead to 2026, Clemson's absolutely going to want to be in on the Juju Lewis sweepstakes. You know, that guy, he's going to be the top quarterback in the class. Talk about elite level talent. He's got it. And if you sign two in 2025, that could hurt the chances with him in 2026. So, no, I don't expect them to just hold on. They'll regroup and go after somebody else. Can't tell you who it's going to be yet. I'm not even sure they know who it's going to be yet if they miss on Nolan. No, I do not have anything new on Sammy Brown. He's made some stops here during the spring. He's been to Clemson. He's been to Georgia. He's going to take his June officials, and then he's going to decide. I can't tell you he's leaning this way. I can't tell you he's leaning that way. But if you follow the visits, he's been to Georgia, I think, more than anybody. And I think he's been there. I think he's been to Clemson one fewer time than he's been to Georgia. If I'm remembering that right, I counted them up. But those are the two schools he's visited the most by far. To me, those are the two schools that are in it. You know, really, really in it. But nothing really new there. Just gonna have to be patient and let it play out. He's not gonna decide before those official visits. He's gonna take all of them. He's gonna take all 5 of them. So he's just gonna. Luckily for Clemson, they get the first one. They get to set the bar high. You know, you knock it out of the park on that first weekend, that first official visit in June, and set the bar high for every other school that he visits to have to meet that bar. And Clemson's been very good at that. They were excellent at that last June. I mean, that's a big part of their recruiting class was built off that official visit weekend in June. And I think the same is going to play out the same way this year. And most of the top 200, top 300 guys are still uncommitted. I think around 20% of them have committed so far. So you still got 80% or whatever that are still out there uncommitted. I know Clemson's got, 6 commitments right now. If you go back to this time last year, they only have 4. So, I mean, it's far from time to worry. It's nowhere close to being time to worry about those kind of things. Past couple of cycles, these kids have going on spring visits. They use the spring visits to set up the June officials. Then they go on to June officials, and then they make decisions before their senior seasons. I've talked to so many of them today. I can't even that were there this weekend. I've already lost count, but every one of them told me they wanted to have a decision made before their senior season. You know, that summer. Because most of them want to be early enrollees, at least have the possibility at being an early enrollee. Yeah, I think that's one thing that helps Clemson when you compare them to Georgia, because if you look at Georgia's roster, they are stacked with linebackers. I mean, they are deep, and a lot of those guys are former 5-stars who are still waiting their turn. But at the same time, Sammy Brown does not strike me as the kind of kid that is going to be scared off by competition. So you got to keep that in mind too. But yeah, he would absolutely have a easier path to the playing field at Clemson. Clemson's not as deep at linebacker right now. So yeah, that's a check mark for Clemson if you ask me. Jeremiah Beeman was back on campus this weekend, 2024 defensive end. Pretty sure he's going to be at that official visit weekend. Fletcher Westfall is supposed to be in town April 5th, 2024 offensive line target. Another offensive line target who told me he was going to be in town on April 5th, Blake Frazier. Do not expect that visit to happen now. He's kind of been a heavy Michigan lean for a while. And I don't think he's going to make the visit to Clemson. I think he's going to end up at Michigan. So scratch Blake Frazier off the visitor list for this spring, from my understanding. Last time I talked to him, April 5th was the day he was coming, but I am now told that's not going to happen. Yeah, Clemson just handed out a new 2024 offer this weekend, Cam Coleman. He, you know what? I'm glad you mentioned that because he is a name that had escaped me there for a minute. But yeah, he was in town this weekend, and Clemson's been recruiting him for a while. The only reason he didn't have the offer was because he had not visited yet. He's visited, now he's got the offer. So we'll see how things play out with him. I think you can probably scratch Jonathan Paylor off of the list of targets for this class. He's already, he's supposed to come in January, but had a scheduling conflict, couldn't come. I was told he was going to try to get here this spring, wasn't able to work it out. I was told he was coming for the June official visit weekend, and now I'm not expecting that to happen either. I think you can probably just go ahead and scratch Jonathan Paylor's name from the target list. Clemson sounds like Clemson might be starting to move on from him. And you see they've offered some wide receivers here over the past few weeks. Wesco, Coleman, those are two of them. But as far as the other wide receivers, Alex Taylor is going to be here that first weekend in June. Can't remember for sure about Wesco. I think TJ Moore, he's another target. He just listed his top schools yesterday. Clemson was in it. See if he gets here that weekend. Yeah, Clemson, the number's still 2. Wouldn't shock me if we got to 3. But let's see who visits in June, and we'll have a better idea of where Clemson stands with some of these guys. Mike Matthews, yeah. See, I guess you could count him as a wide receiver. He's an athlete. Clemson was really recruiting him as a safety, but sounds like he's kind of intent on at least starting his career as a wide receiver. And Clemson's fine with that. They're not going to say, no, we want you as a safety. If he wants to come in and play receiver, they're absolutely going to let him. Still think he'd be a take-it athlete, though, and probably wouldn't count against the wide receiver number, but wouldn't call Clemson the favorite for him by any stretch. Pretty sure you could probably expect him here in June. I can't remember if that's confirmed yet or not, but I would absolutely expect him to be one of those guys to take a June official visit of those 2 5-star athletes, Mike Matthews and KJ Bolden. I've said many times, of the 2, I think Clemson's got a better shot with Mike Matthews than Bolden. Just think Clemson's culture fits Matthews better. I think Matthews is the better fit, and I think there's stuff about Clemson that has made an impression on Matthews. Wouldn't call him the favorite by any stretch, though, but they're in it. And at this point, that's all you can ask for. You want to be in it going into the summer, going into those official visits. You want to be in it and get those kids to campus that weekend and put the final nail, really kind of put the final nail in that coffin that weekend. Yeah, NIL has really hurt Clemson when it comes to receiver recruiting. If you're not out here, if you haven't jumped both feet in with this pay-for-play stuff, it's probably going to hurt you when it comes to wide receivers. The top guys command some big dollars. So if you're not going to negotiate and play that kind of game and get in the bidding wars, then you're going to have to rely on your evaluations even more and kind of hone in and target on some of those, the guys just in that next tier. Not the big time 5-star guy. Not saying all of them are like that, but a lot of them are. They just command a lot of money. They're worth that much money. And some schools are paying it, some schools are not. A lot of them are going to go to these schools that are paying it. Clemson does their NIL a little bit different. It's more incentivized, from my understanding. You don't ever hear it talked about. There's a reason for that. Some schools, some kids really like it that way. Some kids don't. But I think NIL I think wide receiver is a position that is hurt Clemson when it comes to recruiting. Add in the fact that the receivers just haven't produced in the last couple of years. The quarterback play's not been very good. And it's stuff that's being used against Clemson on the recruiting trail. But I love the group they signed in 2023. None of them are big-time five-star guys, but I think every single one of them got high upside. And there's not a guy that they got an offer out to in 2024 that I do not like. I like them all, man. I think they've all got a lot of potential. Yes, Riley will be on the sidelines. He's not going to be in the booth. You won't see the big cardboard things on the sidelines anymore where the way they relay formations and plays in and stuff. Those calls are going to come directly from him. He will be on the sideline. Depends on your perspective, man. They are worth whatever somebody's willing to pay them. The numbers 2 for 2024 at defensive end. Beeman, Jeremiah Beeman, one of the guys I mentioned earlier, he's a defensive end. C.J. Jackson's another guy at the top of the board. He has said he's going to take an official to Clemson in June. He has publicly said that. He has been one of the top targets all along, and I think he is a guy that Clemson is absolutely in it for. Probably going to come down Clemson and Georgia, so we'll see how it plays out. But, again, a lot of these guys, we're just going to have to wait out to June. I can tell you, hey, so-and-so's leaning this way, so-and-so's leaning that way, but it don't mean anything, man. None of that stuff means anything till we get to June, and these schools really roll out the red carpet for some of these kids that they have not had the opportunity to do for yet. So – yeah, I think more is being made out of that than what it really was. I think there were certain routes last year that they were allowed, based on the look the defense was giving them, they were allowed to run the route either right or left. You had to run the same route. It just depended on which way you could run it, and it was based on the way the defense was lined up. But, yeah, there's not going to be any more of that this year. That's hard to answer right now. It's not going to be like Tennessee. They're not going to run, wide open all the time. I think there will be times when they want to run tempo, and I think that is part of why Riley wants to be on the sidelines. He can get the play signaled in faster, so when they do want to run tempo, they can. It'll probably – the game and circumstances going on within the game will probably dictate when they want to run tempo and when they don't. But it's definitely going to be emphasized, but I wouldn't expect it to be Tennessee fast or anything like that. But, yeah, you can absolutely expect tempo to be a part, just not on every single series. I'm sure he is. Heck, he's already been used in a whole lot of ways. He's been lined up in the backfield. He's been lined up in the slot. He's been lined up out wide. It's hard to use him more in many more ways than they've already used him, if we're being honest. But, all these kids are excited about this new offense. It's been successful all 3 seasons that Riley's run it. Clemson's offense has not been all that successful the past 2 seasons. And these guys came to Clemson to play in a dynamic offense. So, yeah, I mean, I think they're all excited. And they absolutely should be. Yeah, there's not going to be anything left. There's not going to be anything from the old offense incorporated into the new offense. I think if Dabo wanted to keep any part of the old offense and thought some of the parts of the old offense was fine, Garrett Riley wouldn't be here. I think Dabo Swinney realized that the whole thing needed to be scrapped and something new brought in, fresh, new eyes, and that's why Garrett Riley's here. Yeah, I don't expect any of the wide receivers that have been out to be back by the spring game. Nah. So I do expect Clemson to try to air it out for that spring game because they're going to have some recruits on hand, and they want to show it. They've been telling recruits, particularly wide receiver recruits, that they are going to air it out now. So I expect them to at least make the effort to do that. But they're missing a lot of guys at wide receiver who are still coming back from injuries suffered last year. Bo Collins, Troy Stellato, all those guys. Adam Randall, who had to have another little procedure done on his knee, his other knee. All those guys that have been held out, they're not going to miraculously be back by the spring game. For example, Bo Collins, he has been taking a lot of reps. He's just not doing any of the live work. One of the practices I was at, he was in a green jersey. He was taking reps like in the individual stuff. He's just not getting hit. He's not doing the live work. So he's taking reps. He's not going to play in the spring game. Yeah, I expect to see a lot of 2 setbacks. I expect to see Shipley and Maffa on the field together a bunch. It's no secret that Maffa contemplated transferring over the offseason. And they told him that he would be a bigger focal point of the offense this year. So yeah, I don't know nothing about Sammy visiting today. I think that was I've not heard anything about that. Although I've been on the phone with other recruits today. He was there right before spring break. I don't know anything about him being there today. All right, let me be clear about Randall. He had a procedure done on his other knee. Dabo Swinney described it as something that he felt like his knee was sticking. So they just wanted to go ahead and go in there and clean it up now so they wouldn't have any issues later down the road. So he could be full ready, 100% to go by fall. He didn't have some kind of other injury or anything, nothing like that. Just something they wanted to go in there and clean up to prevent anything from happening down the road. I know, right? There's only one ball, man. It is definitely going to be interesting to see how they do this because both of those backs are capable of starting. Yeah, okay. I'm not saying he wasn't. I'm just saying I don't know about him being there today. Yeah, I'm at home today. I'm not in Clemson. I haven't talked to Sammy in a couple of weeks, but if you got 2 reports to say he was there, I'm sure he was there. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how they split up the carries with the backs and keep both those guys. I shouldn't say happy because neither one of them are selfish guys. They're both very unselfish players. They have that team first mentality. I mean, let's face it, man. Phil Maffa's a guy that can go and start at a lot of places. there are some people who think he probably has more NFL upside than Will Shipley does. So it's going to be interesting. Absolutely. Yeah, Sammy Brown is a priority target. Always has been. Clemson made sure he knew that by giving him his offer even before June. They wanted to reinforce that. We'll see if they do the same thing with David Sanders in this cycle. Dabo doesn't do that very often, though, but they did it with Sammy Brown. And I think a lot of that was because they were so familiar with him. He'd been there so often, Camden, Clemson, and all that stuff. Yeah, Clemson needs to hit on a couple of defensive ends in this class because they're kind of thin there right now. Absolutely. I kind of like the wide receiver room the way it is. That they need to hit on a couple. They need to hit on a couple guys and keep some talent coming in though. But again, like I said earlier, I love the guys they signed in the 2023 class. Ronan Hannafin does not get enough, attention. That kid, he actually was ranked fairly highly. Some people thought he was a top 100 talent. I think Tyler Brown was vastly underrated, and I think Noble Johnson can be a stud. I think he can. He's going to have some opportunities to show what he can do this year. We'll see if he's ready as a freshman. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to come out and light it up in his first year, but I think he has got the potential to be a stud in this offense. Kid is, I said it 100 times, he is built like a tank. Just because I like the wide receivers, I'm not saying they're all first round picks or anything. We just have to wait and see how that plays out. Did anybody think DeAndre Hopkins was a first round pick coming out of high school? I surely didn't. I mean, Mike Williams, I surely didn't. Those guys turned into first round picks at Clemson. That's something I can't answer. No, they're not. Do not expect them to go to the portal before the season. I do not think that's going to happen. No. I mean, heck, they are 3 over right now. You talking about them having to yank guys. He's not as thick as Rendrick Taylor, no. But built, yeah, he is built. Man, he is a physical specimen. He is a physical specimen, but no, he is not thick like Rendrick Taylor was. Rendrick Taylor was shaped more like a fullback linebacker than a wide receiver. Anything else? Got to keep this one a little shorter tonight. I got another recruit I got to talk to here in about 10 minutes. So the dog is not in here tonight. So she had to make sure she would not be a distraction tonight. And with that, I will bid y'all farewell. Talk to y'all next Monday. Appreciate all y'all tuning in, man. Check us out, allclemsontigers.com.